So what is up, guys? Nick here, back again. Welcome back to the More Nick Eckerman channel. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the ZTE Axon 30 5G. Now, the ZTE Axon 30 Ultra 5G we covered earlier this year. This one is the cheaper brother, and it comes in at $499. I already opened it for review, but take a look at it there. It is a beautiful phone for the money. You can see Axon written right there on the back. And it's a very shiny back as well on this phone. It does give you quite the camera setup. We'll talk about that a bit later, but its big deal here is the under display camera right there. You can't really even see it because it's like an all screen display right here. No pop-up cameras, nothing like that. It's literally like an all screen. Let's take a look at what comes inside the box here. So you do have some warranty guides, and you're gonna have a SIM card tool in this sleeve. And then right here, you'll see it does have a charger. This is going to be actually a 65-watt charger in here, so they're not giving you no cheap charger. They're giving you this nice brick, and it's going to charge this thing at 65 watts. That's faster than some phones that cost twice the price of this. And then over here, we do have ourselves the USB-C cable right here for the ZTE Axon 30 5G. Now, depending on where you're at, you might get a little bit different cables, depending on if you're in the US or another country. But right here, you do have yourself also a USB-C to 3.5 mil adapter. So they got you covered there if you like to use headphone jacks as well on the ZTE Axon 30 5G. So I would say a pretty nice, healthy amount of accessories in the box here for the ZTE Axon 30 5G. And I think that's going to be enough with the box. It's a pretty simple white box right there. Go look at the phone really quickly. Now, talking about the specifications, you do have yourself a 6.92 inch 1080 display. It's 1080 by 2460 pixels. You do have yourself a 64 megapixel quad camera setup on the rear. However, only one of them is 64. The 8 megapixel is the ultra wide. And then on there, you also have a 5 megapixel macro and a 2 megapixel depth camera. So just the 64 megapixel wide is the strongest camera here, but you do have a nice, it's a nice design overall. I think it's pretty classy looking. It looks kind of, futuristic, and kind of like, the cameras are super amazing, and you'll see how good they are later in this video. Now, it also does have 6 to 12 gigs of RAM. This one particularly I have here, my model has 8 gigabytes of RAM on board, and it does give you a Snapdragon 870 CPU, which is supposed to be an upgrade over the 865 Plus, but not quite as fast as the Snapdragon 888, but also stays cooler under load than the Snapdragon 888, and it does have very good performance with the Adreno 650 GPU. So overall, I've been finding the performance to be very strong on here. We'll talk more about that later, but it's a very good CPU. And this also houses a 4200 milliamp hour battery. So it's not the largest out there, but I've been finding the battery life on this phone to be excellent on the day-to-day. Very strong, actually stronger than some flagship phones that I have used as of late. So very good battery so far as well. Now, discussing the build quality of this phone, it does come with a glass front, and on the back it is a plastic back. So it's got that shiny glass look, but it is a plastic back here. It does say ZTE right there, Axon right there. You can see it does pick up lint and stuff like that because, this is a shiny black back, so you will see that. But it's an interesting look. I would say overall kind of looks futuristic in my take. However, you do have a plastic frame, so this phone doesn't feel quite, $1,000, anything like that. It doesn't feel amazingly high end, but it actually looks that way, and it feels like a practical, functional, pretty looking device. That's about what I could say about it. It's a good looking phone. However, it doesn't feel like you're paying $700, $800, $900 because you're not paying that for this. But overall, it's got a nice premium look, but not quite the premium feel. And discussing the display a little bit further, this is an OLED display. So if we go over here in the settings, we'll go to display settings here. It's 120 hertz as well. So you can have this thing in 120 hertz all the time. You can have it in 60 hertz, or you can keep it in the auto mode. This also does have good color saturation. You can put it in a more colorful saturation if you want it there, and it will get a little bit more poppy. If you bring it over here, you can go to soft as well if you wanted a softer color. Not a fan of that. And you can tweak the color yourself, how you like your display in that circle right there. I personally like it there over in colorful. They also have a dark mode on here, which will turn basically everything dark depending on the time of day. So that's pretty neat as well for the ZTE phone. And then you'll see right there, we do have a night light and that's about it. Top area settings, you can hide the status bar, or you can have the notchless display. You see that feature? Notchless display. You know where that comes from, the notch. So basically, letting you know you don't get no notch on this phone. So we go to text size and display over here. We can go to large and stuff like that. So there's a lot of tweaking you can do. Overall, I would say the display, it looks pretty nice when you go through the wallpapers and you see how colorful it is. It's not overly vibrant and it's not overly bright, but it is really large. This phone actually feels larger than like an S21 Ultra, for example. It's 6.92 inches. This thing's almost 7 inches large. So even though it looks like a standard large smartphone in this video, it's a very big smartphone in terms of screen size, but it's not super heavy at only 189 grams. So that plastic body is a good choice to keep it light, but large at the same time. So I've enjoyed the large screen. This thing is huge for, you know, what you're paying for. You don't get a lot of 6.92 inch phones for $500. So this is a pretty large phone for the money right here, I would say, on the ZTE Axon 30 5G. So pretty neat. Overall, you can see the wallpaper definitely looks quite nice. Now, talking about the software, this is running MyOS, which is ZTE software atop Android 11. Now, you'll see it does have, you know, pretty colorful overall look to this thing. And then you got a few features in here that they include, like the Z Pop feature right here, which is what I have right here on the side, allow you to go back. And then if you bring it off to the side and you kind of do this right here, you can use this feature. Let's go ahead and use that feature right there. You'll see, it took me a couple tries, but it pops up a few features right here on the side. You got home, you got this ability to do a screenshot and stuff like that. So there's quite a few features you can do with that. In addition to that, if you go to record screen, you'll be able to do that on this phone as well. Again, up here, you do have quite a bit of feature set in here. You have dark mode, screencast. If we go over here, you got DTS sound. You do have, you know, read mode, which will basically turn the phone into, you know, a black and white reader. So quite a bit going on. You do have a nice brightness slider, big buttons right here for, you know, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, stuff like that. And then you could go ahead and use gestures and motions like raise to wake, auto answer, pocket mode, flip to mute, disable. There's a lot going on there. And then over here with the wake up Google Assistant, you can go ahead and hold the button to wake up the Google Assistant. They also do have different ways to navigate the system. You could use virtual navigation, or you can use gestures on this phone, which is sweet, which is what I like to use. And then over here in SyncMine, it does have 5G smart communication. So quite a bit going on there. But other than that, I think it's just a slight overlay over, you know, stock Android. It's not like overly, you know, customized or too heavy of a skin. It's actually pretty simple. They just throw a few tweaks on top to give it its own flair. They got their own power saver mode, their own ultra power saver mode. They have AI optimization, a sleep mode. So they got a few things going on here. If you hold down, they do have different effects to go through the screen, kind of like what you would find in a launcher right here. So if you're into that kind of stuff, they got that for you. You can add widgets down here. So just a clean, I would say simple overlay atop the Android software with MyOS here on the ZTE. It's simple to use. There's not much going on. There's not much to learn. You'll get the hang of this phone pretty quickly. And that's a good thing. You know why? Because it keeps the phone very smooth. There's nothing that really lags it up. It feels ridiculous smooth day to day. So I'm actually very impressed with the performance on this phone. Every time you open something up, the animations look smooth and solid. So it's a very quick feeling smooth phone every day. I think you'll really enjoy the performance overall. It doesn't hang or lag or anything like that. It just feels buttery smooth. Now, when it comes to storage, this phone is offered in 128 gigs or 256, but it does have micro SD card expansion. So if you do pop the SIM out, it's down here, you will get yourself some micro SD card expansion support. So that's pretty neat as well. If you go with a 256 gig model, you can get it with 12 gigs of RAM as well. I don't think you're going to need the 12 gigs though. Talking about battery life a little bit further with this phone, I will say that the battery life has been very good. This phone will easily make it the whole day, even with pretty heavy usage. I find that it drains, it sips battery. It actually does very well on the battery life. So if you're looking for a strong battery life, that 870 I think actually seems to be a little bit more efficient than the blazing fast 888, which seems to drain a little bit more battery. So this phone right here, just very good at overall everyday battery life, very strong. I'm getting like 8 hours of screen time with this thing, and even with the 120 hertz, it can get at least 6. So it's doing very good on the battery life. Not to mention having fast charging support through that USB connection down there really gives us an edge over some other phones because it has 65 watts of that stuff. So that's like insanely fast charging for this device. So you won't be down without a charge for a little bit of time. You'll be just fine there. Now, talking about the main camera system, let's go ahead and see what we have in here. So when you take a photo, it's pretty quick. You have a night mode here. You also do have the ability to go ultra wide, or you can punch in up to 2x. And then if you hit that 2x and go like so, you'll be able to go up to 10x, 5x, or 20x. So there's quite a bit of zoom you can reach. However, I do have to mention, once you get past about 5 to 10x, it starts to get pretty bad. So I wouldn't really use 20x unless you absolutely have to zoom on something. And then with the portrait mode, you know, it also looks pretty decent. In the more mode, you have a manual camera. Up here, we'll let you tweak the ISO, exposure, white balance, stuff like that. If we go over here back to the more section, we do have a panoramic shot, a mono shot. So if you like to change the color and do mono photography, you can do that here on the ZTE Axon 30. If we go over, you got magic shutter, long exposure, watermark with the watermarked photo. You do have macro mode, or the 64 megapixel, where it's using the full resolution of the sensor. Now on the video side of things, this thing can do up to 4K at 60 frames a second. So if we go over here and go 4K at 60, which is pretty dang good for $499, that's what you would expect. Very good. Then if we go over here, you have a multi-camera mode, which is one of the features of this phone. You can use multiple cameras at once. You can shoot on the wide and the standard at the same time. That's pretty sweet. And then if we flip it around to the front, you probably are wondering, how does that camera do now that it's underneath the display here at 16 megapixels? That's what I'm reading here on my notes. Under display, I've actually found this to be a little bit disappointing. So I think ZT needs to improve this camera quality. It kind of makes it a little bit blurry. It's not the best. So once you take a photo, you'll see that it kind of has this like shiny look to it. I just think it needs to be improved. It doesn't give you quite the best overall quality. I'll show you some samples in a minute here, but the front camera with the under display, you're kind of making a sacrifice. So I would say I'm going to use mostly the rear camera on this phone. In the settings menu, you can see they keep all their settings right here in the camera, so it's easy to get to them. I'd say the camera is an enjoyable experience on this phone, especially on the rear, but the front camera being under display, kind of see it right there, it is kind of making a little bit of a sacrifice to have that beautiful all screen. It just doesn't come out quite as nice as if the camera was exposed. So I think there needs to be a little bit more work done there on the under display, but it's not a deal breaker for this phone if you're not into taking a lot of selfies. Now, discussing the audio quality, this does have a loudspeaker.
Samsung Galaxy Z3 1 week later. Now, I believe this is the prior version. This is the trending in the right direction.
But it doesn't look like we have stereo sound here.
That's really a good thing. I want to now talk about the inner display.
So you're not getting quite the dual speaker setup you're used to from a lot of other phones, but at least you get a pretty loud speaker for the main one that you are getting for this phone. Now, talking about biometrics before we wrap up this review, if you go ahead and look, you'll do have the in-display fingerprint sensor, and this reminds me a lot of, you know, some other phones out there like OnePlus, for example, with their in-display. This thing is blazing fast on the day-to-day, and yes, you could change animation, I believe, on this one as well, but look at this, every time it goes right in. So a blazing fast experience with that. Discussing the phone call quality, I haven't had many issues with this. It's been pretty good, and it does have Bluetooth 5.1 on board as well as Wi-Fi 6, so it's not bad there either. You could see having the shiny back does give you quite a bit of a fingerprint magnet, but you can keep this in a case. No case included in the box, you have to get that separately. But overall, ZTE Axon 35G, who is this for? Well, this is for somebody who wants a lot of features for not a lot of money. $499 is not super cheap, but there is a lot of phone you're getting here. You're getting quad cameras, you're getting a 6.92 inch display. This thing's almost 7 inches of phone. You're getting 120 hertz panel. You're getting a 4200 milliamp hour battery, 65 watt charging. A lot of the features you're finding in this phone would typically run right around $799 for a phone. So you're getting a lot. The only thing I think that is a sacrifice here is a front-facing camera. It's not quite as great as it could be, and there's a reason for that. This is a really innovative technology, putting the camera underneath the display, giving you a full screen. So sacrifice had to be made a little bit there. Well, let me know your thoughts on the ZTE Axon. I will leave links to where you can check this one out, pick it up down below. And anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you found this video helpful, entertaining, informing, do me a favor, click that like button for me, subscribe for more, and I'll catch you all on the More Nick Ackerman channel. Be sure to be well, and peace.